This is Wendy Halley, and you're listening to Lucid Cafe. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Lucid Cafe podcast, coming to you from lovely Seattle, Vermont. It's been a bit rainy. I think it's time to make a sacrifice to the weather gods. I've been wondering if they like chocolate-covered caramels. I mean, I'm willing to eat some if it'll make them happy. Can you believe that this season of the show is already winding down? Only one more episode after this one before I break for the summer and hopefully get a whole bunch of writing done. For the last couple of years, I've been working on this writing project during any spare moment I can find. It's a beast of a story to write. Lots of layers and threads to follow, and I feel the ending of the story pulling at me now, like it wants me to get there. So I'm hoping I can make some decent progress during the podcast break. If you never hear me speak of this book project again, you'll know it was an epic fail. Maybe the story gods would like chocolate-covered caramels too. All right, I can do that. Okay, let's get to today's episode. My guest, Stephanie Banks, is a highly sought-after intuitive channel, mentor, and guide who helps people connect on the soul level. She channels from the perspective of any soul currently on the planet, souls on the other side, purely non-physical beings such as spirit guides, as well as nature spirits. Connection and communication are common themes in all of Stephanie's professional endeavors as a speech-language pathologist, a birth doula, lactation consultant, infant massage instructor, and intuitive channel. When her mother's dementia made verbal communication impossible, Stephanie found ways to communicate with her mother's soul. This was the beginning of her channeling journey. So please enjoy my conversation with Stephanie Banks. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Me too. From the little I know about you, you are a channel. That's what you call yourself, yeah?
An intuitive channel, that's right.
Okay, so how would you define that?
Yeah, so channeling as a verb to me means connecting to divine energy and wisdom. And I believe we're all channels. So this isn't unique to me. It's just that the way I have developed this skill is unique to me, and the way that I express it is unique to me. But channeling, we do all the time. Art is a form of channeling. Music is a form of channeling. Dance is a form of channeling. Writing as well, channeling. Cooking, all these things where we tap into our divine energy, our natural creativity, allow for ourselves to self-express. These are just forms of channeling. So the way that I use it professionally now is I have learned how to get out of my own way so that I can hear messages, information, insight, and guidance from the divine perspective to support myself and my clients in their journeys, in their decisions, in their relationship.
Okay, so what do you consider the divine to be?
Wow, this is where words and language can fail us, right? To me, divine is love. And I do refer to it as many things: source, creator, God. I'm comfortable with all the many different words that we use for it. But it's the vastness of who we are. When I'm channeling, I'm not going outside of myself for something, I'm going within. And that's because I do believe we are divine beings created in divine image with divine energy, here to play out a variety of experiences for our soul's growth and expansion. So divine is the beauty and the all and the love and the compassion that is all around us all the time.
Okay, so how did you come to that? I mean, because I'm trying to figure out how to word the question. Because you say it with certainty, it gives me the impression that you must have had an experience or something that tells you that this is indeed what I'm connecting to.
Mm. Well, the path I've taken to do this type of work has been related to my experience and my relationship with my mother. So my mother had a form of dementia that affected younger people. She started to develop symptoms in her 50s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And as her symptoms worsened, with dementia, your neural pathways start to break apart, and you can no longer, for many people, have typical communication, your traditional pathways of verbal communication and auditory comprehension. What you understand of language starts to, in certain types of dementia, fray and disconnect. And it becomes very difficult for those around you, myself in particular, to stay connected. Communication is how we stay connected with one another. And I was losing that possibility with my mother because she was not making a lot of sense anymore. We were having a lot of frustrating conversations. I am a speech therapist by training. So this is my wheelhouse. I know how
Right.
to work with people who have communication disorders, but there is something entirely different when you are working with a patient and when you are working with a parent. So
Yes.
as much as I knew clinically, I needed to find a way to transcend traditional communication in order to stay connected to my mom. And channeling, going right to the soul of things, was the mode I chose because I was blessed with a best friend who was a professional channel. And I asked her, can you channel my mom for me? I'm struggling. I don't know what she needs from me. I don't know what my soul agreement is with her. How do I support her in this phase of her journey? Because right now I'm clearly not doing it well. Most of our conversations are ending in exasperation, and that's not how I want that. Those are not the memories I want to create with her. So my best friend channeled my mom's soul. I understood and learned what exactly she did need from me. And in the profound experience of that, I decided I am going to learn how to do this for myself. And if possible, learn how to hone this skill so that I can offer it to others, because it offered me so much incredible healing. And it repaired my relationship with my mother, which was complicated, as most of our mother-daughter relationships are.
Complicated's the best word to use. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah. So this is a gift that you developed later in your life then?
Yes, I would say that, again, I believe we all have this gift. It's just not everybody is interested in honing it and skillfully applying it. So as a child, I was very, very sensitive. I would communicate with animals and with trees. I thought everybody did, but I didn't really know this was an option until I was well into adulthood. And I had that friend show me that, yes, you can connect with souls who are here on the planet with us. So yeah, so then I sought mentorship from a world-renowned psychic medium, from another really well-known intuitive channel. I read every book, I watched every video, I did every practice I could find. And it took years before I felt willing to make the leap to offer this more openly, not to hide behind two sets of closed doors, which is the only way I used to channel. I would channel in my closet, quite literally, with the door shut, and then my bedroom door shut, because I had this belief that I needed to be completely separate from all noises from the outside world. I didn't want anyone to intrude on this. It was a deeply protective space. And I also wasn't really ready to announce, hey, world, I'm channeling.
So you were literally in the closet.
Correct.
Okay. That's awesome. I'm trying to picture you sitting in a dark closet having your spiritual practice. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I would do that when I channeled, not for my spiritual practice. That takes place openly. But to do this work that is not mainstream, it requires a level of courage to openly talk about it and share it. And that took me years to build that level of
I'm
courage
familiar with that feeling, yes.
and self-trust. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. No, it does take a lot of courage because our culture doesn't really support these practices, does it?
Not yet, not fully, but more and more.
It does seem to be opening up some, which is promising. All right. Were you then able to connect with your mom on your own, or did you still need to use your friend?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I learned as I was engaging in deeper training and being mentored was it's not ideal for us to channel for ourselves because we are not neutral,
Hmm.
right?
No shit. Yes.
So when it came to receiving or asking for specific guidance from the soul perspective of my mom, I used my friend. We channeled her many times, or I had her channel my mother for me many times. And that's how I had the trusted clarity of what would come through. What developed was a conversation with my mom at a soul level where I could start to hear her nuanced communications with me, nothing that could even be perceived by body language or tone of voice or anything that I could use my five sensory for. It was that sixth sense of intuition. That's the place from which I channel. That's why I call it intuitive channeling. And so I used my friend to channel my mom when I had really important questions that would guide our journey. And in the other moments, I stayed connected to my mom at a soul level with lighthearted, heart-based conversations. That's what I would call it.
Okay. And were those inspired by the channeling experience?
Yeah. Yeah. Once I had that insight as to what she wanted and needed from me and what her soul was here to do during this last segment of her journey, there was so much freedom that came with that and relief of, okay, so this isn't all my work. I don't have to intervene at every step of the way or anticipate all of the things that might be coming her way. She's a wise being as a soul and knows what she's doing. And it doesn't have to look all dark or all any one way. I can allow for what's meant to be her journey to unfold.
Gotcha. It sounds like you were feeling a bit responsible for her well-being, I guess, or
Yes. Yes,
yeah.
that common experience that some daughters have with their mothers, taking care of them and tending to their emotional needs.
So did you notice, or did that translate in your five sensory experience with her? Did you notice a softening or a shift in your connection with her?
Yes. Yeah, it was pretty immediate because the shift in me was so great that I softened and opened to what each new interaction could hold, where the wisdom might be, where we might find places of connection. Whereas before I was looking at it much more from the left hemisphere of the brain, the logical piece of things. How can I organize this? How can I organize her? How can I reorient her to reality, whatever reality is, right?
Really practical. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Logical, practical, clinical approach to things because that was my background in training.
Right, right. That makes sense. One of the things I'm always curious about is how an individual perceives. I'm curious how you perceive
Mm.
when you're in that state.
When I'm channeling, I close my eyes. That lets me not receive unwanted information from how the person I'm channeling for is responding. That can be very distracting. It also lets me see the images that come through the channeling. So channeling, when I'm doing it, is language based. That's my jam as a speech pathologist. I love words and language. So there's a steady stream, a pretty fast paced flow of words, and they are combined with imagery that I am being shown, so that when I am no longer receiving the transmitted message, I can tell my client, this is what else I saw. These are some of the pieces and the elements that went along with the language that was coming through to help really make a comprehensive picture. There are times when I feel like body sensation, but I am a conscious channel. I'm not doing trance channeling. So I'm really fully in my body when I am channeling. That by preference, that's how I choose to do it. But that doesn't mean that I don't also feel things. So I might feel warmth, or I might feel expansion, or I might feel chills going down my body during certain transmissions. And that's fun. That I enjoy that.
So I know it's really ineffable. It's hard to put this stuff into words, but I'm curious about, is it clairaudience that you're hearing messages, or is it that it's more of a thought insertion in your psyche? There's like a chunk of information and then you're just translating it?
Oh, okay. No, it's not B. I would say if given the choice of the two, it would
Or
be,
something else, yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it is really hard to describe it. I do say that I'm hearing it. It's just a different type of hearing, because when we hear something, it's going through sound waves, and then our brain is making sense of it, and then we're able to use it. I'm not hearing anything, obviously, in sound waves, but there isn't a translation that's going on for me. I have moved out, I've moved all that I can possibly move of myself and my biases and my judgments and my history to the side, so that what is coming through can be received in as pure a form as I can receive
Okay.
it. But I am sort of hearing it, but there's not the delay of hearing then speaking. It's all at once, hearing, transmitting, all in the same moment.
All right. So that is truly what channeling is, right? Is that you are speaking, like some force is using your body to communicate. Is that a way to put it?
I like to say that I am lending my vocal mechanism to the highest vibrational loving energy in order to serve the person I'm working for, or the group that I'm channeling for, or the entity. So yes, I'm not lending my body. I like to be really clear about this, because I know that will not work well for me, but I am lending my vocal cords and my articulators, and also what I understand, some level of my understanding of the world, just so that I can make it understandable to my client. If I have absolutely no understanding of the message or the imagery that's coming through, I can't make that very useful to my client. So that's how I would describe it.
There's a lot there I want to kind of dive into. The visuals you perceive, do you know how to interpret them, or is that something you just share what you're perceiving and let your client do that work, or are you interpreting for them?
When I'm seeing the imagery, it is going along with the message. So as I'm speaking something, there will be an image, or like a movie. Sometimes I see it in that way of unfolding with movement and with form and figures. And that helps me to understand what's coming through, so that when the transmission is complete and I open my eyes and I say to my client, let's process that now, then I add in, when I was channeling for you at this part of the message, I was seeing you with your daughter doing such and such. I'm not sure exactly what you will relate to, if anything, in that, but that's what I was seeing. And then they will be able to tell me, oh my gosh, we used to do that together, or I know what that means, or I'm not sure, but I'll sit with that for a bit and see.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then I'm curious about who or what you're channeling. You said the divine. Does it have a similar feel, like a consistent feel every time, or does it feel like a different being or source?
Yeah, well, the soul that I am channeling is the soul that is requested by my client.
Oh,
So so I'm going to divine energy, because that is all love. I'm going to fifth dimensional consciousness, which is unity consciousness, that interconnectedness of all of us. But what I'm channeling, or the origin of where I'm going for the channeling, is based on what my client asks me. So I always say this in the beginning of the sessions, I can channel any soul that's on the planet with us right now, any soul. That includes their soul, which is, I call their higher self. We have a lot of questions for our soul once we know that we can ask them and get answers to them. So that is a wide open space. I also do mediumship work, which is channeling from the perspective of ancestors and loved ones on the other side. But a lot of the joy and I guess, what my zone of genius is, I would call it, is channeling souls that are here. This is useful to parents who want to know how to support their children's souls in their journeys. How can they provide what that child needs? Because we don't always know as parents. We almost never know. It supports business owners. I've had CEOs ask me to channel the soul of people they are thinking of hiring, for example, to get a clearer picture of what that person's
Damn, that's quite an interview process.
Yes.
Behind the scenes interview.
Exactly. And I never say yes, hire, don't hire, but once you go to the soul, you really get a feel for that person's energy imprint, and you really get a feel for sometimes even personality.
I'm trying to imagine the scenario when the hiring person decides not to hire after a channeling experience with you. I'm thinking like, wow, let's say the physical interview went great, but then after talking to you, it's like, no, I'm just thinking, why that would be, wow, that would be fascinating, I think. Anyway.
Yeah. I think most of the time that I've channeled something along those lines, it's in favor of the hire, not because of a skill set. I'm not channeling anything that is three-dimensional, but when we hear from the soul, and the soul, say, for example, shares that these are the areas I am here to expand on, and these are the experiences that I'm calling forward in order to achieve that. And here's how I can be of service to you, dear CEO, person that I'm going to work for, supervisor, whomever. Well, that's really beneficial to know. And so it's really more so than deciding whether or not to hire someone. It's giving them an understanding of how can I prepare for this relationship to be the best it can be.
Okay, so that leads me to ethics. Like, is it ethical to be connecting with the soul of someone who hasn't given you permission to do that?
Well, if they come through, I have permission from the soul. There are times when a soul is not coming, and I'm made aware of that. And what happens in those situations is an energy comes forward on behalf of. So it might be some guides on behalf of that soul, our spokes guides, let's call them. But we won't be left with like oh, sorry, nothing's here, can't do that. Next question. We will get what will be in highest service. And that's what keeps the boundaries nice and clean and clear. I am never, ever shown or given information that would be harmful or change a trajectory that is already in place, that's already in forward motion. So that's why I say a CEO or someone might call and say, I'm thinking of hiring this person, I want you to channel their soul, but they're not basing their decision on the channeling. They're feeling,
I wouldn't think,
into the energy.
Yeah.
And the same goes with those who are wanting to channel from understanding their spouse or their partner in a deeper way. Channeling lets us cut through all of the layers of the three-dimensional world that we get caught up in, that we start to mistakenly believe is all there is, and go to that place of interconnectedness, that profound love that we all are here to share. And then we can expand together and grow.
So having all of these experiences, and I imagine it's very powerful, right, to work with people in this way. Has it changed your perspective on the nature of reality?
I feel like I use that word very sparingly, reality. It's such a subjective everything. And I learned that with my mother, because her reality, I could say, was not reality. She could go outside in 100-degree weather and claim to be freezing. And I could say, well, that's not real. There's no way that that's possible. Or she said any number of things that were completely nonsensical, but to her, that was real. So we all have our own version of reality. And I try to remember that. I'm not perfect at it, but my teenagers' reality is real to them, for example, and mine to me. And we really have no place or right to determine what is true or real for somebody else as it relates to their experience of the world.
When you talked earlier about not advising people to channel on behalf of themselves,
Mhm.
what do you think are some of the stumbling blocks to doing that?
Our attachment is the stumbling block to it. So I teach people how to channel. And one of the things that comes up in my workshops is I learned to channel using a pendulum and a letterboard. So I could spell out words or names of guides. And that's how I started. I don't use it anymore except for teaching purposes. But I think it's a wonderful way to approach channeling for some. It's not a tool for everybody. So if we are truly of neutral mind, which are we ever really perfectly in neutrality? No. We have our conditioning and our upbringing and all the things that influence us. But if we can learn to do the practices that bring us closer to neutrality, so meditation is a big one, of course, then channeling can be very, very useful. There are certain areas of our lives where we may find it nearly impossible to be neutral. For example, in the workshops that I teach, someone might say, I don't understand. I just asked for guidance, whether or not the person I'm dating is going to be who I marry. We're not neutral there, right? We have an attachment to that person, to the relationship, to what the outcome will be of the relationship. So that will influence what we believe we're receiving. It's impossible not to have that
Right.
influence. So I recommend finding the places, if you're going to use your pendulum or practice your channeling skills for yourself, find the areas in which you're not so attached and practice into that. And then have someone else who is a very well developed channel the things that feel big to you, that you're not neutral about, that you do have attachment with.
Yes, I was just thinking about how I've known people to keep pulling tarot cards until they get the one they want.
I mean, I would, if I did tarot cards, I would probably be guilty of that myself.
Yeah, I know.
Because
It's not that you say, well, I don't know if I really understand this one, so maybe I should get 3 more. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we are humans too,
Oh, yes, very
with
much
our
so.
own
Yeah.
deep desires. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the trickiest hurdles is learning to discern the difference between true intuitive guidance and
Yeah.
wishful thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
of course, if it's for yourself, you're right. You have an agenda, you have an attachment or an
Mhm.
unconscious hope or wish or a conscious one that could certainly interfere, I guess. Yeah. So it sounds like you fulfilled your original dream of not just learning to channel, period, but also teaching others how to do this.
Mm.
So how do you approach teaching?
With a very joyful heart. So I know that channeling is a blast. It's so much fun. It takes us into realms and worlds that are just purely loving and gorgeous and light filled and possibility filled. And I really do envision a world in which each of us individually are moving in accordance with what feels true and right to us based on our own inner wisdom, our own intuition, and using that in service to a world that protects all life for all time, that lives in harmony with nature and in rhythms and in generosity with one another. I see that world. And I believe that for me, channeling has been a way to stay connected to that vision and to share it with others. Because if we're truly going to that divine energy, that is it for me. That's everything. So that's what I see. That's what I serve into. The reason I teach channeling from a lighthearted place is simply because two reasons. One, it's a lot more fun that way. And two, as soon as we start to take this so seriously, we lose our connection to the expansive, joyful, delicious divine energy that we are and that surrounds us. And then once we lose that, then it's all left brain after that. It's all what we think. It's all what we are trying to effort towards. It's all outward, goal oriented, directed. Whereas the right brain is the intuition, the receptivity, the expansive side of things. So that's when I'm teaching channeling, we have a lot of fun. We dance with our pendulums. I play really hilarious music. We take lots of breaks. We laugh a lot. If I see that people are really starting to wrinkle up their faces and their foreheads and concentrate a little bit too hard, I know it's time to take a little break, go out in nature, reset our energy, because the lightness and the joy that comes from our true divine nature, that's what we're trying to channel. And all the other stuff we can find in social media. Or
Okay. So it sounds like what you're saying is that you can't channel from your head. You're not thinking channeling into being, right? You're being open, I guess, to receiving.
that's right.
And so you're doing all kinds of fun things to get people out of their heads, it sounds like,
Yes.
into that more childlike, curious place of possibility.
Yes, exactly. Playful. Yep.
Do you do in-person workshops or do you work with people individually?
I have not been doing in-person workshops since the pandemic, but I do them virtually. So everyone shows up with their pendulum and I show them the materials to get ahead of time. And then I move them through a process that has worked for me. So I believe it can work for others. And then the bulk of my work, in addition to the workshops, is private sessions. So I will channel for private clients for 30 or 60-minute sessions, and we will weave in and out of wherever they want to take their session, whatever they're asking me to channel, so we can have clarity in the areas of their life that will benefit them the most.
Very cool. All right. So how do folks find you?
soulinsight.com is my website. That's where I have all of my events posted. And I'm also on social media, Stephanie Intuitive Channel.
Perfect. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's a pleasure.
If you'd like to develop your channeling skills or learn more about Stephanie's work, please visit her website, soulinsight.com. With this podcast, my goal is always to try to be curious, and hopefully that curiosity leads me to ask some good questions here and there. And then you get to decide what you think. So I've always been a bit leery of channeling, and I have to say I still am. That's definitely not a diss of Stephanie at all. It's the practice itself that seems, I don't know, maybe ungrounded is the word. So that's my 2 cents on that. It's coming from somebody who has a lot of invisible friends. So as always, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because what do I know? Okay, that does it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back in a few weeks with the final episode of Season 5. Until next time.